everyone. This is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I have Mr. Bill Rice coming on. Bill has a great message to share with you about how you bring in leads, not from a paid perspective, but how you use online to drive leads to you and utilizing online, offline together. It's a lot of times people are thinking, man, I can't use online so much, for a business to business type of lead. And we're going to disprove that on this call. So get your pen, get your paper out, write down some really clear notes. There's some excellent things in here. We really break it down into its tactical and its practical. So I think you're going to enjoy this one. If you do, please give it a 5-star review. I'd be forever grateful. If you need help with building your business out, your sales teams out, predictable revenue, or you're just looking for, I need help with my follow-up, and we've got an automated SaaS product, reach out to me directly at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com and let me know what you're looking for, and we'll have a conversation. All right, let's go talk to Bill right now. Hey, Bill, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for the opportunity to be on board with you.
So why don't you tell everybody, where you've been, where you are, what you want to do, and we'll set the frame for this call.
Yeah, absolutely. So my kind of the briefest story is it's been a wild and wandering sort of journey. I started at the Air Force Academy, came out of there, flew for a very short period of time. And then at the time they were banking all the pilots. And so I didn't get a plane out of the deal. And so I had to look around. In the Air Force, they've got you hooked up for a certain period of time. And so when they don't have a job for you, you have to go find one. And I looked around, I ended up finding a small organization. If you're old enough, you probably watched The $6 Million Man, and the Air Force Office of Special Investigation is where I ended up because it was interesting. I ended up in a even smaller section of that where we ran counterintelligence operations. And so enjoyed that time. And people often ask me, like, how did you end up in marketing from here? And there is a little bit of a thread. Back in that day, we were in the early stages of the internet coming online, if you will. So this was in the early 90s. And a lot of what we were doing in Intel, we started to see sort of migrated over into the internet space, and IRCs and websites and all kinds of interesting things. And so I was a part of helping to kind of do that transition and running operations inside of the internet, later to be called sort of information warfare and those sorts of things. But we spent a lot of time on pattern recognition, watching for patterns, and then building systems to sort of give us an idea of, hey, something's happening or something's not happening, or these two nodes might be connected. And so when I transitioned out of that, I went into the civilian sector. It's always hard for us to translate what we do. And I wandered into financial services and sold myself as an internet security guy because I knew a lot about the internet. And it was, again, the first place I started was an internet-only bank that we were building at the time. And that was a whole new concept. So I started with internet security, but then quickly used all my pattern recognition, intrusion detection, all that kind of stuff. But that was sort of fun for a while. But I really liked the marketing, and marketing was changing at the time. So wandered into financial services marketing and have, in essence, been there ever since. Again, using some of those same skills of pattern recognition and systems building to kind of scale some more intentional lead generation programs versus just kind of your general creative marketing.
Yeah, and you guys were responsible. I think you built was a $1 billion bank, first online bank, or one of the banks, anyways, that were internet based.
Yeah, that was back in 2000. An internet-only bank was a new thing, so we were one of the first. And kind of the irony of that, which just kind of shows how the market evolves, and I'll drop some names that you guys are probably familiar with. So when we first built the internet-only bank, there were a couple of interesting things that we did that are sort of counterintuitive to the way you do your banking today. One, we actually had a tutorial on how to fill the form out, because you had to fill out a form to get approved for the lending that we did online. And so that was a weird thing. People didn't fill out web forms, and now they're just auto-populated. The second thing is people have probably heard of Bankrate. That was our first marketing partner. But what actually they did at the time was they had the position in um, all of the business sections of the newspapers, and they posted in those business sections, they printed rate tables, and then they gave URLs to come to our website. So we're literally buying print advertising in newspapers in order to bring them to a website so that we could lend to them. And then we then engaged with another small company because we were that didn't work terribly well. There was no such thing as SEO. This was pre-Google,
No.
believe it or not, pre-Facebook. So you kind of, if anything, you bought position in directories and stuff like that. So we engaged with a company that was doing an innovative thing called lead generation online, called Lending Tree. And when we first started talking to them, we said, "Hey, we've got this home equity thing, does it in real time. Like, we want to buy every home equity lead that you have." And they said, "Great. We'd be happy to have you as a partner. We'll start faxing the leads to you on Monday." And we're like, "Wait a second. We don't have any loan officers. We do all this through computers." And so we actually helped them build, at the time, was essentially an XML engine where when they generated their form, they would then post it, wrap it up in XML and post it over to us, and we would
Yeah.
take it in and give them back an immediate offer. But that two-way transaction was a brand new thing at the time. So anyway,
Well,
that's kind of where we started. So very, very early days.
so folks, I just want to let you know that I understand everything Bill just said. I understood who Lee Majors was with the $6 million man. I understood, print ads to, believe it or not, online came from offline,
Yes.
the concepts, and certainly understand faxing and faxes. So firstly, thank you for your service in the United
Mm,
States Air Force. I too served in the military for about 12 years. So
nice.
I understood all the acronyms you used. So, the interesting thing is that it's a perfect segue because, like offline really was there first.
Yep.
Like a lot of people can't even imagine like what was pre-Google. What is that, like prehistoric? Like, we
Yeah.
can't, some of the, especially the kids coming up now, they wouldn't even like, think. Um, and yeah, folks, at one time we didn't have motors for our boats either, right? We used to have to row them. So of course, Bill and I remember motorboats. So the point being is that it's a perfect segue because in the B2B space, a lot of times people are just, you know, uh, constantly harping on, you've got to go outbound, you got to go outbound, you got to go outbound. And, I built many, many businesses that way and still do today, right? Going outbound. But there is a lead generation. I was just having a conversation with a gentleman this morning. They do operational support for companies and they're trying to figure out how to get those leads to come in online, and they're hitting like Facebook and they're trying to go to a setter and it's not working out for them. And so we had a discussion on that. So, but you have focused a lot on generating leads for business to business
Mhm.
from the online perspective, bringing them in versus just going out with traditional prospecting ways.
Yeah, totally.
Accurate?
Yeah,
So,
totally.
okay, I'm a guy or a gal listening to this right now going, okay, you got my attention. Where do I start? What do I do, Bill? Right?
Yeah.
How'd you make it work for $1 billion? How'd you do it?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
I do it?
Yeah, I think more than ever before, I think it's getting easier and easier to generate inbound, even at different levels of organizations. So I think a lot of times, early stage entrepreneurs have done a lot of scrappy stuff in order to generate interest and attention and audience and that sort of thing. But now, even in the larger organizations, once we get into that, multi-million dollar a year organization, all of our executives seem to kind of retract into the corner offices,
Mhm.
and become less and less visible. And I think, as social media has evolved, and now with AI is presenting a whole, different level of this, I think the notion of founder led or founder-led brands. And now we kind of like to talk about as executive-led brands. It's becoming more and more acceptable and somewhat expected that your executive suite, and that could be just you as a CEO or a founder, but later as you get other CEOs on, or other executives on board, your COO, your CFO, and those sorts of things, to expose those brands. So if I were starting with a small organization, the first thing I would start to do is start having conversations on LinkedIn. For a very long time, in internet years, for the last 5 years at least, LinkedIn has shown more and more interest in content, in the rewarding that interaction. They no longer want to be essentially a graveyard for resumes when you need them. And so they're definitely rewarding more and more activity in and on the platform. Video is becoming more and more important. And so the first thing I would do is just start sharing as you're making, right? So as you're making things, as you're working into the industry, as you get to the second level of that, it becomes really useful to share what you know about the businesses that you serve. So going into those same channels, talking intelligently about the market segment, the industry segment, and in essence, doing thought leadership beyond sort of the classic white paper, if you will, and engaging on LinkedIn as a platform for communication and for sharing your thought leadership in the industries you serve, as well as the problems and solutions that you provide, I think is a great place to start. And then extending that, because that's essentially your audience building mechanism, and then within the comments of that, starting to have some form of lead magnet, right? Some place to send them, newsletter to join, deeper information on a blog post. I've seen things as simple as creating something in a Google Doc that's super useful, and then just making it public and sharing that. And so anything that just sort of deepens that connection and that value proposition, I think is a great place to start. So just getting out into your audience, and sharing valuable information that sort of draws that audience in and around you, more so than some of the other. And then again, that can extend. You get into owned strategies as well, like email marketing and stuff like that. But I would just start, again, back to the easiest and simplest answer to your question. I would just start on LinkedIn, and start sharing, the things that are in your head with your audience, and they'll start to draw around you.
So I heard two different types of share, right? I heard sharing what's in my head. So, I have a thought, oh, it's a great thing about how to grow revenue, for example, in case, or how do we create predictable revenue? I just record that, boom, put it out there. And then I also heard I'm serving people and maybe I can use case studies or actionable things that happened. You and I were, just discussing, I was talking with a friend of mine this morning who was trying to figure out how to bring more leads in online for their business to business. They're an operations company.
Yep.
Things like that. In the conversation that we had, I could share maybe their company name if I had the permission to do that. Or, big ones like, we worked with Intuit at one time and we got them a $17 million swing in a year on $100 million division, and their messaging was off. And
Yeah.
who would think Intuit's messaging was off, right? But
Right.
it was. So I'm sharing that type of thing. And then people are commenting on that and I'm responding to these comments.
Yeah, ideally, yeah, you want to be responsive. Although you can see over time, particularly in LinkedIn, a lot of times your audience will start to take some of that load off your shoulders. So getting them to talk to each other can
Okay.
be more powerful than even you responding to each and every comment. Early on, certainly that's the way to get the ball rolling, so to speak. But after that, a lot of times your audience will do a lot of that, and that's often more valuable to your audience, is to have that community communicating, within your thread, so to speak.
So are those people like a something that goes viral, do they share it with other people and that's how I get more users to come in? I'm thinking like somebody who's never done this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, kind of the nice thing about again, responding to all the comments so that people know that you're there, and then they get involved. That in essence, when they, comment in there, that's gonna spread your reach out further. The platform's going to let kind of your message go out further. And then as additional people come in or get exposed because of their comments and they start interacting with each other, just kind of snowballs. And then I think what kind of is the secondary effect is once people see your post, and I suggest kind of like you mentioned, problem solution is a great framework. I think people get hung around case studies too much. Think in
Yep.
terms of use cases. You can, because a lot of times when we're early on, we don't have enough case studies or we don't have permission, but using just scenarios and case studies, that becomes valuable. And then you, in essence, when those folks start talking to each other, you've created this little community around you, right? So
Yep.
you've created now a community of folks that are tied into you because of the value proposition, but they sort of they come for you, they sort of stay for the community that's built around that. And again, that's what sort of starts to snowball things.
Great. And then, and then when I'm ready, I drop a lead magnet in. Hey, I had this really neat resource. So I have this, by the way, I wrote this special whatever. And thought you guys in the community might want to have this, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're doing is we're creating awareness in the beginning, right? We're creating the, old ADA
Yep.
concept, right? So
Yep.
attention, interest is, so we are creating the attention, creating some interest, building up the desire, getting them to somehow take some action toward the direction that we're looking to go. That's
Right.
really the formula for this process, just using LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course, don't forget the last step, some sort of capture mechanism, right?
Right.
So, and again, early on, I would just give a bunch of stuff away. And then later you want to think about the capture because a lot of times people build up a pretty large audience. They're like, well, I don't get any leads out of this. Um, uh, Fortunately, in LinkedIn, I do see people more comfortable reaching out, direct messaging, or finding me in other ways, and saying, "Hey, I would like to talk to you about this," or "I saw you sharing this," or "I saw this video from you." Um, but early on, as you start to give things away and you start to realize that okay, you're getting people coming and grabbing stuff of value. At some point, introducing that form, that gateway,
Yeah.
so that you can actually start to capture and collect that information. And that can be super simple. A lot of times, something like type form, where you ask them a few questions. People also forget about that too. Whenever you're building a form for capture for lead generation, because that's your inbound motion, right? That's starting to happen. Instead of just asking them for their name and their organization and their size and their email, ask them a few, again, extend that problem solution framework, ask them a few questions about potential problems that you solve, like, hey, what of these are the biggest challenges, could be a question. And then because if you ask two or three questions as they're moving through that form, you'll actually get a higher conversion rate than if you just slap them with give me your name, your email, and your
Yeah.
phone number. I think we've been trapped in this feeling that if I ask them less, they'll fill it out more.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case.
No, actually, and to validate that, one time what we did was we actually had a problem here that we were trying to solve for our own business. And we just created a few questions on Typeform and said, hey, would you all give us some input, if you would, on this challenge that we're having? And they did, and we ended up building a very, like 543 people who actually ended up joining a newsletter from that
Yeah.
particular thing, because we created the newsletter out of that concept. We didn't initially think we were going to do that. We were trying to solve our own problems. So I found that people will engage if you give them
Yeah.
those ability for more open-ended questions to be able to answer.
Yeah, and I think, and again, I don't have a lot of empirical evidence to back this up, but I think people feel, whenever you're kind of going towards this inbound lead generation or any type of lead generation, there's a component of building credibility and trust. I
Right.
think if you ask them a few questions, they're like, wow, they get my business, they understand my problem. So that trust and credibility starts to get built. So by
Yeah.
the time they filled out and submitted the form, and then you reach back out to schedule, a meeting or a demo or whatever the next step is, like some of that trust and credibility has already been built before you even hop on the call and have a direct conversation.
Yeah. They go from, I don't know you to, okay, this is a person who's kind of piquing my interest on a regular basis. Trust level starts to go up and familiarity. And then by the time you get there, it's like, oh, it's Bill. Right.
Yeah.
And so let's have that conversation. Can I do this? Can I join in on groups online? Like, let's say I'm a real estate person or I'm a manufacturer, or, I don't know, I sell medical devices or insurance or whatever. Um, but I'm a manufacturer. I can join kind of groups that already have members in there and start posting these type of things. Can I do that too?
It's interesting, and I think at some point LinkedIn will probably do something with this. But the groups concept, they've got sort of a newsletter feature. They have company pages. Those are just not that robust.
Okay.
So I don't think, and I think it's because they haven't built the mechanisms to kind of, create the algorithm to give it reach, right? So company pages, you post something on there, you never see something from a company page in your feed, right? So the algorithm is most robust around the individuals. I think this is also why companies often fail if their executives aren't willing to come out to be the face, because the only thing that really works on LinkedIn is individual profiles. So if you're building lead generation, it's really important to kind of convince your executives to get out in front, because one, that'll help any other lead generation you're doing, right? Because the executive level has built an audience around the company. Because the company pages won't do that. So really, honestly, the best way to do it is just to, on your personal profile, get out there and start to have conversations. And the LinkedIn algorithm is really good at pulling that audience in and around you, assuming that you're doing a good job with content.
That makes total sense. I do this with sales team members all the time. I'm like, you must be out in the public square.
Yes.
And they're like, why? I'm a salesperson. I'm like, because
Yep.
if you think that people aren't searching you before they actually talk to you in a B2B scenario, you're incorrect. And
Yeah.
so, if you pull my profile up and, type in Doug C. Brown, type in your profile, who's going to have the stronger profile? That's,
Yep.
it's going to carry some weight and credibility for you. All right. So if LinkedIn's one great way, what's another? You mentioned email. Is there like a second go-to? Is that email or is
Yeah.
that something else?
Yeah, I mean, again, it just kind of depends on your role, right? If you're a CEO, you're trying to build out a company, again, depending on what you're doing, I like LinkedIn as a starting place, and as an executive, I want to be talking into that industry. Surprisingly enough, and I'm mainly a digital guy, but something that we've found that's really effective for us right now is kind of secret sauce, so to speak, is conferences, and probably in a non-intuitive way. So whenever I'm speaking to companies about, hey, let's leverage some conferences to build that audience and to get into, I'm a big fan of niching into certain industries so you can show credibility
Yeah.
around those problem solution sets. One, ideally, you try to get on the stage. Right. And that can be hard, but you'll be surprised. A lot of conferences are looking for content. So that's always the first go, is I try to get my CEO and my executive on the stage. And then the second part is most of the show ROI happens before you ever get on the plane. So taking the time to build up a campaign around pre-show to fill up your schedule, because tell people all the time, the person that's chatting you up at the bar is not your ICP. All of your ICP have been engaged and pre-booked because they want to be efficient with their schedule, and they're already booked out. They're not hanging out at the bar. They're meeting with the partners that they want to talk to and the solutions that they're interested in. So building out a campaign early on to identify who the ICPs are and to engage them and get them scheduled before you ever take off to go to the conference. And then your conference is really well organized. You're just going, from meeting to meeting, and you're engaging with people that you've already sort of pre-validated are your ICPs. And then here's the secret sauce. If you're young company, maybe you don't have the funds, it's a really effective strategy to run even if you're not going to the conference. So if you can identify conferences that will potentially attract your ICP and then run a campaign with the ICP saying, hey, I noticed InsurTech's coming up. Are you going to that conference? You have an open-ended conversation there. Oftentimes you can book a meeting ahead of or outside of the conference, even if you're not going to the conference. So conferences are an excellent sort of way to really target in on your ICP and know that they fit because the conference is the type of content. And then the other thing as a part of that campaign, we often look at the conference agendas and we will look for agenda items that are sort of associated with our problem solution mix, and we might mention that in part of the campaign. So, so that's a kind of an interesting way to digitize an in-person type of event. And then, of course, if you build enough demand or interest in that conference, then it might make sense to drop the $3,000 to $5,000. We find that the ROI foots out on that really well if you can build the demand. But if you don't get enough interest, at least you get 2 or 3 meetings out of the deal. So that can be a great campaign to run.
So a couple things. ICP folks is ideal client
Oh,
profile, right? And I love this concept of what you just talked about. This is kind of out of the box compared to what a lot of people would even think about, but it makes so much sense to me as you were talking. I was like, that's absolutely brilliant. So what I'm hearing is we target the conference that fits our problem for solutions for people, right? Or their problems, our solution.
yep.
If we can, we want to position ourselves as one of the speakers because that immediately elevates our positioning from who are you to expert because you're just on the stage, right? Now, if we're now looking at potential who's attending, who's going to be there, and we're trying to match up appointments prior to getting there and while we are there. In the thing, how are we reaching out to the people prior to?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll get super tactical here. So the way we run these campaigns is one, we've probably gone into Sales Navigator. We've already identified a population that is our ideal client profile, right? We know who they are, the roles, what companies they're at. That's well defined. And then we will look for a set of conference schedules that fits alongside of that theoretically these people would probably be interested in attending, right? And it doesn't have to be a perfect match. We just know these events are kind of interesting. And then we're going to go and look at each of those events, and they always show out the agenda beforehand. We're going to look at the agenda, and we're going to pick out the 2 or 3 from each of those conferences that our people, our ICPs would likely attend because that's probably a problem that they have. Now, these where people get confused and think that okay, this doesn't work because you don't really know if they go to the conference. So then what we do is we build out, this is where AI comes in great. You can tell them, hey, I've got this conference, I've got this type of people. I want to build out a 3-message campaign to try to book a meeting, with these ICPs. And then I'm running in 2 channels. I'm running in LinkedIn. I'm running a connection request campaign. So I'm reaching out to those folks and I'm mentioning, hey, hey, I was taking a look. Are you going to InsurTech? Looks like they have a couple interesting things. We do this. Would you like to connect? So I'm always transparent. I never run LinkedIn messages or in-mail messages or anything. I do a connection. I'm fully transparent. I'm a salesperson. This is where, like you talked about, if your profile is nicely built out and you have an opinion, you have some thought leadership, they won't view you as a salesperson. So anyway, that's your connection request. You just say, hey, are you going to this conference? Looks like there's a couple things that are interesting. Love to have a conversation or set up a meeting at that conference. Simultaneously, I've gone to Apollo or Rocket Reach or one of those. I've found their email. I'm sending a very similar email to them. Again, it doesn't matter if they're coming to the conference. The responses that we get out of those couple of things are usually one of a couple of responses. One, sure, I'd love to connect. let's talk. And you get a scheduled meeting, drop them a link, schedule a meeting. The other thing is, no, I didn't know about that conference. Maybe I should go there. Hey, you want to talk? Or, of course, no, I'm not attending the conference, and they just brush you off, which is fine too, right? So, so the interesting part there is, one, you don't have to be attending the conference. You haven't made any pretense there that you are. You're just saying that's an interesting conference, and usually the responses are, yeah, I'm interested in what you're saying. They just, the conference is just context, right, in the back of their mind. Or, yeah, maybe I should think about the context. The largest percentage of the ICPs, or the ideal customer profiles or client profiles that you're reaching out to, are not attending the conference and have probably never heard of it. But it breaks through the noise, and it tells them that you know something about their industry and them. And so the trust and credibility starts to gain.
It makes total sense. Now, once I understand, like, let's say that I'm getting, because I'm getting super tactical here, right? So
Sure,
let's
sure,
say
sure.
that wow, I'm having really great results with this particular group within, like, I looked at the conference agenda, I picked two or three things, and like this one's lighting up and people saying, yeah, sure, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you. Can I make the assumption once I meet with these people, if this goes well, that I now online can target more people like this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a feedback loop, right? So if you're you respond, you're getting responses, you're finding out. I mean, it does a couple of different, again, going back to Intel days. Like, I love
Sure.
to pull in feedback, right? So it tells me if the message is resonating. You were talking about messaging earlier. If the message resonates, it says, okay, I've got the right type of problem and solution. I already know a little bit of Intel, because if I looked at this conference and I pulled an agenda item that fits with my problem solution, like, those conferences do a lot of research in order to build out their agenda. They already know from some sort of market research that they've done that those are important concepts to talk about. So if my message is in the agenda for the conference, I'm probably on the right track. And then if I reach out to people in my ICP and they start to resonate with it, now I have 2 points of evidence that, okay,
Right.
my messaging is tuned in. I've got the right sort of problem solution mix. So there's a lot of points of pattern that are being built there. So yeah, I love, and again, it's the intel in me. I love to bring back those little pieces of feedback, because it gives me some intel that I'm in the right place.
Well, the reason I bring this up, Bill, and you're bringing up ICP, right? I tell people all the time that most people don't really know their right fit buyer
Yep.
profile. Um, and Wharton's done the research, Harvard Business has done the research. 97% of people don't know it in full or in part, right?
Yep.
That's what they come back with as well. So the reason I asked that question is because it's such a pain point. Like, if people don't do the research you're talking about, they're missing, and they're kind of poking and throwing money at this or money at that. And like, oh, that didn't work. I just spent $35,000 on that. Oops.
Mhm.
Right. I just spent $42,000 on that. Oops. I've done it,
Yep.
and so once we're really dialed in on that, then we know with more intelligence, I should say, we have more
Yep.
intelligence. We know that our probabilities are going to be higher. We are testing before we're actually rolling our money out in full
Yep.
on these things. And it's just the right way to do that. But the thing is I find most people won't take the time and energy to do that. They'll just throw it in. But what I like about what you're doing is this is like, it's very low budget,
Yep.
safe way of doing it. And you may even pick up a fair amount of business prior to, if you were going to the conference and speaking at the conference. The other thing is if one is speaking at the conference, they are now building audience members in the conference room who are going to come see their talk anyways.
Oh, it's a perfect pre-filter, right?
Yeah.
If I can have, I mean, essentially, if I can get on the stage, this is usually my prerequisite to going to conferences anymore. But if I can get on stage, like, I have pre-filtered 100 people in the room. It's like
Mm,
giving a demo or having a discovery
right.
session with 100 people. And then the secondary filter is all of the people that come up to you after you get off the stage, right? There's always the line that queues up, and you've got 5 or 6 people that like have a specific thing they want to talk about. And that's usually sort of a secondary filter. And then you'll be shocked at how many people were just like, I don't know, too shy or whatever, that will contact you afterwards and say, "Hey, I saw you do this thing, and I had a couple of extra questions or whatever." So, also, if you do get that opportunity to be on stage, um, another mechanism I like to put in my show or in my presentation is a QR code that sends them to a capture. Right? It's like, hey, if you want a copy of this presentation, or you want some follow-on notes or whatever, sometimes I'll create a Notion page or a Google Doc. I'll put that up as a QR code, which you can build out in Chrome. It's just got a little button. You have to search around for it, but it'll make a QR code for you, and you just copy and paste it in your presentation. And then again, a capture mechanism. So think about ways, because a lot of times people, you see them pull out their phones, they'll get that little
Yeah,
thing,
absolutely.
So yeah, leave
Yep.
leave those little breadcrumbs wherever you can.
That's brilliant. The first time I ever saw that done was at a Taylor Swift concert.
Uh,
It was before Taylor was really known as Taylor Swift. And
yeah,
my daughters loved their music, and they were just tiny, like little,
yeah,
5, 6 years old type. Um, and she was coming to Houston, and I was living in Houston at the time. And I said, geez, I'm going to take my daughters to this. Now, I will tell everybody, when I got at the concert, there were 40,000 people at this concert, and I think I was one of 8 males in the concert. I we were looking across the arena, and I'm like, oh, hey, Bill, how are you? Like
yeah.
you're on the other side, right?
Right, right.
Um, but what she did was super brilliant. It was a marketing play all the way. She
Yeah.
was using social media, all the codes, all of this stuff you're talking
Yep.
about, and people were clicking on their
Yep.
phones and capturing this and subscribing. And I was like, oh my God, this is just so brilliant. It
Yeah.
was, never mind the fact my daughters had a great time, but it was like, from a business perspective,
Yeah.
I probably should have written that one off. I didn't write it
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
because I was just so impressed. And look, she's Taylor Swift, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Huh.
what you're saying, I'm trying to reinforce it with the fact that Taylor Swift started out doing the same type of thing you're talking about on stage,
Yeah.
and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So, wow,
Well,
I
I
could.
mean, yeah, your top performers are marketers, right? I mean, there's a reason that she's the first billion-dollar performer, right? Is because, yeah, she's, your top performing salespeople are going to have a little marketing in them, right? It just makes the sale easier. It builds the audience and the credibility earlier. You're just kind of moving your activity a little bit up in the funnel, so it's huge. You'll look in your sales organizations, or the CEOs that are successful. They're building a personal brand. I mean, there's a reason, you know, Sam Altman, even though he's got $1 billion company, is showing up on Theo Vaughn's podcast, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's just like,
yeah.
they're marketers. They know they have to do that. So I can't, sort of impart, enough on young founders, CEOs, executives. Like, you have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and start building that personal brand, because it's going to help your salespeople below you do their thing, right? If they've already heard of your company, or they've already heard of, your chief marketing officer or your CEO, it's going to make their sales process so much easier. So it's a key factor all the way through the organization, all the way through the sales and marketing organization, to have as many personal brands as possible, because it will make your sales agents' jobs, your SDRs, your BDRs, so much easier.
It makes, I'll second that one, because, at one time, you know, uh, with Tony Robbins, Chet Holmes, right, organization,
Yep.
um, I can't tell you how many people, it's a lot. Like, when people didn't, like, some people know me within an industry, but
Yep.
I'm still not as well known as I probably should be, or could be, quite frank. But
Yep.
the moment they hear I was the president of Tony Robbins and you know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
moment they associate that with, it's like, I just get elevated up
Yeah.
And folks, you can do this with different aspects of your life. Like I just helped a company build an advisory team for medical. And one of the first gentlemen we got on there, he's a PhD, not an MD, but he's from Yale Medical.
Mm, yep.
Automatically credibility,
Credibility.
right?
Yeah.
Funny thing, Bill, like when people look me up, they bypass all my degrees and they realize one thing, that I went to Berklee College of Music.
Yeah.
And so they all say it. They're like, my God, you went to Berklee College of Music. I'm like, I have degrees in nuclear medicine, business, biology, right? All this doesn't matter. It could be a doctor. They're like,
Right.
you went to Berklee College of Music. So the power of what you're talking about, the power of building a brand, building a
Yep.
personal brand is huge. And if you can get that going, as you just stated, folks, if you can get that going within your organization, that everyone in that organization is building a personal brand, uh, selling becomes it becomes so much easier
Yeah.
because it's no longer you have to prove. It's the old adage, you never go wrong buying from IBM. Why? Because they had a
Right.
brand.
They had a brand. They had a brand, and nobody's going to question that. The other thing that you brought up, especially since we're using so much LinkedIn these days, take the time and effort to fill out your profile as complete and thorough and interesting as possible, because affinity groups are real, right?
Yeah,
That Berkeley College of Music, and if I see somebody that reaches out to me from a military academy, like it creates
right.
a whole different starting point for the relationship. So, and it's not always every piece of your portfolio. They might hit me and like, oh, you worked at Quicken Loans, and that might mean something to somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, you went to the Air Force Academy, and that might mean somebody to somebody. So you never know what pieces are going to mean something to them. So the more complete, and the more sort of show people that you have all kinds of facets to your personality, is going to give you a better shot at having something that creates some affinity between you and your prospect.
And those of you who are prospecting people like that, look
Yeah.
at their profiles because you'll find common connection and bonding points that Bill would just talk. Like I can talk to him about Lackland,
Yep.
Texas, and he'll know
Yep.
exactly what I'm talking about in the Air Force.
Yep.
And right. But the fact that I know that piece of information can be a bonding point for us, which if I'm competing against other people who don't know about the Air Force or where he went to basic training and where all these things happen, he's going to, with higher probability, at least like me a little more than he's going to
Right.
like other candidates because of the information that I would glean out of his profiles.
Sure.
And so that's another reason you want to put that information that Bill's talking about in your profiles, because other connection points, it's like, if you don't have it there and someone else that you're prospecting looks back at your profile and it's not there, and they will,
Yeah.
but if it's there, like if I notice somebody went to some prestigious university and study music, for example, I can mention that university and still say, like if they went to, I don't know, the New England Conservatory of Music, and I can say, hey, I also went to Berkeley, right? That might
Yep.
be enough I had people do that type of thing, Bill, where they will reach out and I'll reach out like that and they'll come back and they'll go, did you know Les Harris over at Berkeley? And then I knew who Les Harris was.
Right.
Right. And it'd be like, oh yeah, he grew up in Newburyport, Massachusetts. I grew up in
Yeah.
Newburyport, right? And so it's all of these little connection points that people don't think about, but that's again building your personal brand, right? So
Yeah.
you're
Totally.
loud and clear. Um, Man, I could talk to you all day, all night about this. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you
This
being
is
here. People can find you is it BillRiceStrategy.com? Is that the best place to go to?
Yep, that's the best way to get connected. If you want to reach out to me, you've got questions. There's a lot of resources there as well. Obviously, if you want to work with me, there's opportunities to do that there as well. But yeah, that's a great place to start.
And if they want to check out your LinkedIn profile, because there's probably like, I don't know, 500 Bill Rices that probably like, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find to a lot of these platforms because I was a digital guy and early to the internet. I am the Bill Rice. So if you go to LinkedIn /IN/Bill Rice, you'll find me. I am quite active there. So I'll probably also show up as one of the top Bill Rices if you were to search. So that's again part of the strategy, right?
Right. And you also have something, I think it was called
I,
myexecutivebrief.com, right?
Yeah, this is kind of this was, sometimes you scratch your own itch. I always wanted a chief of staff. I'm super curious. And I love the notion of people kind of looking around and bringing things to me. So I built a little bit of a tiny team. Now we use some AI to do some of this stuff. I bring in some information, things that I think are emerging trends and things that CEOs should be watching out for. And then I pull those together and have a little conversation with you. Sometimes I'll publish some of the videos that I'm doing around those things. But it essentially gives you kind of that chief of staff brief once a week to let you know kind of what's emerging and what the trends are, and you can take a look at that as well.
That's awesome. And those of you who are reaching out to CEOs and business owners, you want to use sites like that, like Bill's site. You find the information that is maybe pertinent to your particular prospect, if you will, and you can utilize his credibility in your prospecting, saying, "Hey, I found this super important information here. And myexecutivebrief.com. I'd like to share this with you." And I do this all the time.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the genius in the room, folks. You can use other people's genius, right? So, Bill, thank you for being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks for bringing your AAA game. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience.
Wow, that was great information, right? So, listen, here's the thing. Using LinkedIn is not that hard to do, but I will tell you that many people who listen to this, even though they go, "Whoa, that is great, I could do this," they don't set time to do it. And that's where they run into the challenge. So what I'm going to do is challenge you right now. Where could you take an hour a week to do this? How about 10 minutes a day? Like literally block a 10-minute something in your schedule to start that process. Now, let me tell you how easy it is to share content these days. If you have an idea, something came up and you're like, I'm really not that good at writing content. And let's say you want to shoot a video, for example, just like we're doing right here now. Here's what you do. You take your content, just write down your thoughts, then go to your favorite AI, right? Your favorite AI, just type in these words, create a 5-point outline for me here. Just 5 points, like just create 5 points so I can do a video, a 2-3 minute video or 1 minute video. And then what you do is it'll create the points. And then all you do is you take those points and you know enough about the subject matter at that point and just talk about those points in the way that you would talk to your best friend, right? And just put it out there. You'd be surprised how quickly you can do this. I create videos literally within 3 to 5 minutes. Like done, shot, done, everything's good. Post it. And that's how easy you can do it. If you run into a situation where you had an experience and you want to share that experience, you could do that. Give me the top 3 points I should be talking about on this experience. And don't worry about it. Just type in, record in. I mean, you can push a button and you can record just like this and just talk to your AI and it will bring you back the 3 points that you want to talk about. Now, here's the thing. Don't filter all this information. Don't make it perfect, okay? You'd be surprised if you don't make it perfect, how perfect it becomes. Here's the point of the thing. What you probably have brilliance with inside you. You're just not sharing it. Now, as he said, when you're sharing it, when you put that out there, you may get some comments in the beginning. You certainly want to comment on that and just say, "Hey, I appreciate that comment. Here's my point of view." Now, sometimes it's great to get a little contrarian in that. Yeah, I thought about it that way, but what about this? Right? And you can keep sharing these things back and forth. This will start to build your audience and start to build your credibility. And then people will actually start to share over time, how this works. You can do this on any social media platform, but it really works great on LinkedIn, as he was saying, okay? I also applaud anyone who will use this conference idea because that is super easy to do. But again, it takes time. So schedule half an hour and say, I'm going to start this process. Even if you do it once a week and it takes you a month to start this process, you're there, you're moving forward, and you're going to sell more because of it. All right. Till next time. Again, please, if you like this, give it a 5-star review. I know it takes a few minutes. I appreciate that. You appreciate the content that's being produced here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'd be grateful. Number 2, if you need any help anyway in your business on and around generating predictable revenue or more profit in the company, especially if you have a sales team, reach out to me if you want some help. Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com, Doug Brown 123 on LinkedIn. Until next time, please go out and sell something today. In fact, make a deal with yourself that every day you're going to do X amount of prospecting, X amount of presentations, and X amount of sales. And that's all you do. You just keep that going over and over and over. Get your sales team to do the same thing, track those metrics. You'd be shocked and surprised happily at how your numbers will go up. But go out and sell something today. Make it a win-win-win play. Make someone happy. You be happy. Someone else is happy. Convey value that they perceive as value. You won't have to discount. Discounting is a thing that if you don't do it, you won't have to make up the lost sales to make up the discount. All right. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast saying to your success.